Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel Now I Know My Rights, a channel and a platform dedicated to teaching you your rights. Today's presentation is about the top 10 rights every patient should know. The practice of medicine is as much about science and innovation as it is about compassion and humanity. Healthcare is a uniquely emotional field where caring, compassion, listening, and empathy goes a long way. Recognizing this fact, there are a number of ethical requirements and legal rights in place to protect patients and to bring a measure of transparency to the healthcare industry. The relationship between a patient and a doctor, as its name suggests, is a relationship. It's a relationship that is supposed to be an interaction between two individuals. There are laws in place to make this interaction a meaningful and comprehensive one. The rights that apply to patients don't stop at the doctor's visit. These rights are extensive and apply to a patient and hospital, rehab facility, nurses, professional caregivers, labs, insurers, and believe it or not, the secretarial staff. It's very important that you know your rights and be empowered to take charge and have a greater control over the biggest, most important, most precious, priceless asset of your life, which is your health. Without any further ado, let's start today's presentation.
The top 10 rights every patient should know. As a patient, you have fundamental ethical and legal rights to protect you in the healthcare system. These rights are guaranteed by federal or state law. These rights cover matters such as access to care, patient dignity, confidentiality, patient's privacy, and a patient's consent to treatment. If violated, it could lead to fines and even prison time. Unfortunately, most patients don't realize their rights, either because those rights are not clearly defined in the bundle of papers that they are required to sign at a doctor's visit or at an admission to hospital, or because at the time patients are so concerned about the costs and obtaining authorization from their insurance company that the last thing on a patient's mind is if they have any rights. The following are your rights. Many states refer to these as Patients' Bill of Rights. 1. Informed consent. This is considered a basic patient right. Part of communication in medicine involves informed consent for treatment and procedures. Informed consent has evolved decades ago from what was at the time only mere consent. Informed consent involves the patient's understanding of the following: what the doctor is proposing to do, whether the doctor's proposal is a minor or a major surgery, the nature and the purpose of the treatment, intended effects versus possible side effects, the risks and the anticipated benefits involved, all reasonable alternatives, including risks and possible benefits. Closely associated with informed consent is the concept of voluntary consent, meaning the patient is competent in order to give voluntary and informed consent. The patient, at his or her own request and expense, has the right to consult with a specialist and seek a second opinion. 2. Patient's confidentiality. Law and ethics state that doctor-patient interaction should remain confidential. Physicians should never reveal confidential information unless the patient wants the information revealed to others. All healthcare professionals who have access to your medical information in the course of your treatment are prohibited by law from sharing it with any unauthorized individual. 3. Right to respect and non-discrimination. The patient's right to respect is the right to be treated with courtesy, dignity, and respect with regards to personal privacy. And also, there is a patient's right for non-discrimination. A patient cannot be discriminated against for any reason. Any hospital that receives federal funding from Medicare or Medi-Cal, which in reality means almost every healthcare facility, must abide by federal anti-discrimination laws. They cannot discriminate against a patient based on race, national origin, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability, age, status as a parent, or genetic information. Patients also have the right to have access to religious and spiritual services during their stay at a hospital. Patients have the right to be free from all forms of abuse and harassment in a hospital. 4. Right to emergency care. According to Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act, you are entitled to have access to emergency services regardless of your ability to pay. If a patient requests treatment for a medical emergency, including active labor, the patient has the right to a medical screening exam, and the hospital must either give treatment to stabilize the patient, or if unable to do so, the hospital must transfer the patient to another facility that can. 5. The right to obtain your medical records and the right to privacy of your medical records. The HIPAA Act of 1996 provides patients in the U.S. with a right to obtain their medical records, including doctor's notes, medical test results, and other documentation related to their care. Rights under HIPAA are strictly enforced. The HIPAA Act also outlines who else besides the patient may obtain your records and for what purposes. Improper access has serious consequences under HIPAA, HIPPA. 6. The right to refuse treatment. A patient may refuse treatment as long as he or she is considered to be capable of making sound decisions, or he or she made that choice when of sound mind through written expression, such as making an end-of-life care decision. From an ethical standpoint, physicians have the responsibility to protect the health of a patient. However, ultimately, the patient has the final decision regarding the medical treatment they receive, even if it means they choose to decline such treatment. 7. The right to make decisions about end-of-life care. Each state has legal instruments such as a living will, healthcare power of attorney, and other directives on how patients may make and legally record decisions about how their lives will end. Healthcare professionals must follow those directives to the extent allowed by law. 8. Abandonment. Doctors have a duty to continue a patient's care after consenting to provide medical care, unless the patient no longer requires treatment for the illness. Doctors must notify patients and transfer care to another capable, acceptable doctor if planning to withdraw care. Doctors may be charged with negligent abandonment for ending the doctor-patient relationship without appropriate referral, transfer, or discharge. 9. Medical research and patients' rights. The issue of patients' rights in medical research has developed over the years because of unethical practices that have occurred in the past. A patient has the right to know if medical treatment is for purposes of medical research and to consent or refuse to participate in such experimental research. 10. The right to know the identity of your healthcare providers and the right to designate visitors. Patients have a right to know the identity of the people treating them, as well as their jobs and their relationship with other agencies involved in their treatment. Patients have the right to choose and designate their own visitors. If there are any clinical restrictions on your visitation rights, you have the right to be provided with an explanation. The bottom line is that by knowing your rights, you can assert more control over your health and the health care that you receive. Being an empowered patient can also help you better manage the cost of your care. Studies show that the healthcare industry is becoming more and more a business for profit. Unnecessary testing and treatment is out of control. When patients stand up for themselves and ask questions and ask for alternatives and demand a meaningful response in writing, the collaborations only leads to a higher quality and more efficient care for you.